It's time to start over. How are your containers looking? If they're anything like mine, the heat wave, the rain, the season has really done a number on them. And rather than trying to rescue them and nurse them along with, fertilizer or amendments or, insecticide, which I'm not a big fan of anyway, I think it's just time to realize that, maybe those plants had their moment and they lasted a good 3 months, and it's just time to refresh. So the spring, early summer is now replaced, or to be replaced, I hope, by the midsummer fall. So I've got a whole bevy of plants, and I just want to refresh these pots and have them looking a little better. So come along with me. Let's take a look at our options. To start with, I found some really pretty plants that would work well. I plan in these pots all the ways up till frost. The first thing I had to do, though, was clean up this space so I have room to move around to put things in. So that meant I'm going to have to move the feral cat stand, then start out by putting some plants in place to see how they look. There's a brown-eyed Susan here. This one is a perennial. So I'm just going to place them in the pot first here and see how they look. Some of these perennials, though, I can put in until October and then plant them in the landscape. Same thing with these coneflowers. Some interesting varieties here that I hadn't tried before. And a coleus, because the back half there doesn't get a lot of sun, and coleus can handle that. So this side of the container, this side of the patio, doesn't get as much sun as the north side. So this was one of those new ones. They called it an orange marmalade firecracker flower. Crossandra infunda, yeah, Crossandra infundibuliformis. But they call it a firecracker flower for obvious reasons. Boy, that color really pops, doesn't it? That's really cool. But I thought, okay, now how does this look if I have all this arrangement together? Does it work well? And what about the ornamental kale? That really looks nice as the season wears on. So, okay, then I thought, then I also have a calamint, a little cat mint here. Well, that might look nice. Not to mention it's kind of attractive for cats, and that is the side where the feral cats spend, so why not? And then the purple fountain grass. Now, this is an annual grass, but I love the color. And again, bringing out that burgundy, which is the same as other plants around. So then it's time to begin. And I scraped off the top couple inches of topsoil and added some Coast of Maine in here to keep it fertile. Then take them out and take a good look at the roots here, because some of them are pretty root bound. That's why they're a little bit cheaper. And make the hole in there. It's not easy to do. That's when I was realizing it was probably easier to not add the new topsoil until I got these in. But lessons learned. Anyway, so position that one in front. It needs more sun. Same thing with the kale. And those will get a little bit bigger. Okay. And then dig the big center here for the thriller, as they call it, the tallest one. Trying to wedge it in there. Man, the root ball gets a little deep. And again, it's only going to be in here for maybe 3 months, but the bottom half was sure root bound. So I cleaned that up a little bit, then positioned this tall brown-eyed Susan in there for that. Now I've got a vinca here on the side, just kind of your standard vinca, but that will be the trailing side. And they can, trail in sun or even partial shade, so it's not as particular. Now this side is going to get a little more sun. Same thing with the brown-eyed Susan. So to try to get it out of the pot, though, man, I had to mash it a bit and then pull the roots off of the bottom because it was really, wow, look at that, root bound. It's just circling the pot. So the first thing to do to really help this plant grow and stay healthy is remove some of that stuff because the plant doesn't need it. I just pulled it all off of there. And in the end, I end up with a big ball of roots that, yeah, we could just toss that. Okay. Then we're going to reposition that towards the middle, but still so it's kind of spilling out and uniting the color. Now I've got some pretty little coleus I found in there. And again, these are just annuals, but I thought it'd be kind of nice. Tie in some of that color together, the burgundy, the cherry, Just some soft, pretty colors. And that coneflower. I love that coneflower. So pretty. Yeah. Sunseeker coneflower. So this is one that the pollinators love. And look at that interesting color. It's got like two different colors in there of coneflower. So I plan to once, before the hard freeze comes, I'll put that probably in another garden bed to keep it. This one too is that's that firecracker plant. Orange marmalade firecracker flower, a crosandra. Now the roots are a little bit fleshier here, but still cleaned it up a bit so it can fit in here. And that kind of helps unite the colors with the coneflower and some of the others. But, obviously spilled a little bit of dirt. Gonna have to mush that back in there. And I always keep the plant tags and take a look at them. I tuck them in the pot usually. So I've got the fountain grass, yeah. And I got there's the firecracker flower from Monrovia. And then here comes the coneflower. This one is the perennial, so I'll put that in a garden bed. Sunseeker Mineola. And then the brown-eyed Susan. Tuck those in there. And then when I change these out for the winter, I store those so I can remember the plants that I like, especially if they do well. Done with that one. Now onto the other one. Here we go. To start off with, I am going to keep the jasmine in there. It's still blooming and fragrant. And that was an expensive annual, like, $45 or something. So I am just going to treat it as an annual because last year I tried to nurse some of these in the house and just brought in a huge spider mite infestation. So I'm not going to do that. But to start with, I'm going to refresh the top couple inches of soil in this pot. So I just scrape it out by hand. And then I, again, have to reposition the plants. And let's see what combination I like. So, I've got that ornamental kale. It came in a 4-pack. Well, that's not too bad. This container gets more sun than the one on the south end of the patio. And then I have a sweet potato vine as the spiller. And this one is just another annual, which is okay. I like the little soft orange here. And then the other plant, well, okay, I guess that would work. So it's time to get to work and start with that. The little red one is just a vinca. I was kind of surprised that that's what that was, but that's a certain type of vinca. So put that back in there and rearrange them again. I have to clean off some of the root bound on the bottom and help fit them in there. And again, the coleus is going in the back because it doesn't get a whole lot of sun back there. I also got a 2-pack of asparagus fern. Those will add some nice filler and a nice sharper color of green, a little bit of chartreuse. And see how that picks up that same color in the vinca right in front. So once I get him out of the container, because these, again, were also pretty root bound. Ugh, okay. So it's a small container, though, and I can squeeze that in around the vinca. And the last step is always, well, the almost last step is to water them in well. That helps settle the air pockets, provides water for the thirsty plants. So they both need that. And I noticed a bumblebee already. I mean, those plants have been in there like all of 10 minutes, and the bees are already finding them. So that's how I know I've done a good thing. And shortly after this, a hummingbird stopped by. Missed it on camera, but that's the way. Now I'm using here some rocks that I have in the landscape. I found that I have to add rocks to the surface to thwart the diggers because they will come and bury little walnuts in there. Then I wonder why the plants are dying. But yeah, adding rocks to the top always helps. All right, that was a dirty job, and it's already getting hot. Gosh. But I like the overall result here. There are some similar colors. They're not going to be identical, and I don't necessarily like the matchy ones anyway. I think this is more interesting, and it's certainly more my style. But we have matching colors on both sides, so I think that's what's important here. Yeah, and these are plants that are, a number of them are perennials. I can take them out and put them in the landscape and hopefully have them show up for the spring. But there are a couple of annuals in there too, including the jasmine plant. So I think they should look good well on into October and keep on growing and looking better. And then the colors are, a little more fall, late summer, fall. So they'll, and with the pinks. Anyway, I hope it all looks good. And thanks for joining me. Let me show you also too the container that I potted up. This is a hibiscus and another Amsonia. So I think it'd be a nice contrast. And as far as I can tell, this particular type of hibiscus should be a sort of a coral pink. It hasn't really, not quite budding up yet. And it was pretty dry, although they don't like to be waterlogged. But they do need full sun. So this will get a little bit bigger and put on its blooms. And I think with the contrast of the white Amsonia here, will really kind of make it sparkle. And rabbit resistant, so I'm hoping this one doesn't get nibbled. But it's a nice little pop of color, as they like to say. And the same color theme from the container and the hibiscus should match what I have going on here at the front. And this is, by the way, my panicle hydrangea. I'm not sure what kind, but it is a beast. I have tamed it temporarily, trimmed it significantly, probably more than I should. I'm contemplating trying to get it to tree form if that's possible. I don't know. But I did save a number of the blooms, and I'm enjoying those inside. But here is the back side of this. At least I got it off of the front porch where it was completely fallen over. But you can see this is formidable. That trunk is formidable. So I have to figure out what to do with this thing. It's an example of a beautiful plant in the wrong place. Something like this, which gets that large, has no business going right next to the front steps because it gets like 10 feet. Maybe it's not supposed to. And that's what the landscaper put it in, and you can see it's flopping over the plants that he put in front. So it just doesn't hold its composure, it doesn't hold its posture very well. It's all flopped over. And similar to this, but I don't mind this one quite as much because this one is on the corner. It's not falling into the front steps. It's falling on the on the Japanese maple, unfortunately. But it's not as bothersome. It seems somewhat smaller. I don't know why, but it seems a little more manageable over here. So in other words, what that plant needs is to not be right next to the steps. It needs to be farther over. Maybe I can move that in the spring. I don't know. I'll have to give that a good think. It would be all right if it could be even farther over here, because look at that little pocket there. There's just a pocket with nothing. And it's, in between the downspout. Oh, hello, what do we got going on here? In between the downspout and the front corner of the house. So maybe if I swapped out this box, put it there, and put this over here, I think at least it wouldn't be falling into the front steps. It would still get the same amount of sun, maybe even more moisture, which would be good. I'll have to give that a think. But again, you got to get the right plant in the right place, or you end up with that sort of situation. So even experienced landscapers can make that mistake, because this was definitely a mistake. All right, let's go home. Come on. That's it for this episode of Milkweeds and Roses. Still plenty of work to do. You go home. For me and my garden friends here. I hope that all is well in your corner of the world and you're enjoying the beauty and taking time to appreciate it. Be well.